Uh, Welcome to this special press conference on Operation Sindoor. We will begin with opening statements by the three senior officers to my right here, who have been directly overseeing operations during Operation Sindoor. We have Lieutenant General Rajiv Ghai, Director General Military Operations, who will cover the aspects related to land domain. Air Marshal A.K. Bharti, to his right, Director General Air Operations, will provide insights on the air domain. And to my right is Vice Admiral A.N. Pramod, Director General Naval Operations, who will cover aspects on maritime domain. Following their briefings, we will move on to the question answer session. I now request the Dgmo to commence the opening brief.
Thank you, Sandeep. A very good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. You are all by now familiar with the brutality and the dastardly manner in which 26 innocent lives were prematurely terminated at Pahalgam on the 22nd of April. When you combine those horrific scenes and the pain of the families that the nation witnessed with numerous other recent terrorist strikes on our armed forces, we knew that the time had arrived to make yet another compelling statement of our resolve as a nation. Operation Sindoor was conceptualized with a clear military aim to punish the perpetrators and planners of terror and to destroy their terror infrastructure. What I do not state here, of course, is the often stated determination of India and its intolerance to terror. It set into motion a very diligent and microscopic scarring of the terror landscape across the borders and the identification of terror camps and training sites. The locations that emerged were numerous, but as we deliberated more, we realized that some of these terror hubs were now bereft of any presence and had preemptively been vacated, fearing retribution from us. There was also a term of reference and our own binding, self-imposed restriction to target only terrorists and thus prevent collateral damage. There were 9 camps that you are now all familiar with, which were confirmed by our various intelligence agencies to be inhabited. Some of these were in POJK, while there were others that were located in the Punjab province in Pakistan. Nefarious places such as Muridke, the hub center of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, has over the years bred infamous characters such as Ajmal Kasab and the likes of David Headley. What followed was a careful scrutiny of each of these sinister locations, their layout, configuration, even the type of construction in each structure, and the terrain obtained around these. This was with an obvious intent to deduce and identify the exact vector that was required for their neutralization, as also the eyes in the sky that we would send up to ensure that we brought back evidence that we had indeed targeted what we set out to. The precise images of these engagements on that fateful and historical night have already been showcased during the first press statement on the 7th of May that was helmed by our Foreign Secretary. I have no doubt in my mind that we achieved total surprise, and those strikes across those 9 terror hubs left more than 100 terrorists killed, including high-value targets such as Yusuf Azhar, Abdul Malik Rauf, and Mudassir Ahmed that were involved in the hijack of IC-814 and the Pulwama blast. The line of control was also violated soon after by Pakistan, and the erratic and rattled response of our enemy was apparent from the number of civilians, inhabited villages, and religious sites such as Gurudwaras that were unfortunately hit by them, leading to a sad loss of lives. The Indian Air Force played a major part in these strikes by engaging some of these camps, and the Indian Navy provided wherewithal in terms of precision munitions. The Indian Air Force obviously had their assets up in the sky, and I will here request Air Marshal Bharti, the Director General of Air Operations, to detail for you the methodology that the men in blue adopted to successfully manifest this mission.
Thank you, Rajiv. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It indeed is a difficult time that we have to come here like this and brief you. We could have done without this, but we had no choice. As the Dgmo has detailed, the event was precipitated by the dastardly act at Pahalgaon. The sequence of events have already been detailed. We carefully selected the targets, and out of the 9 selected targets, the target systems that were given to the Indian Air Force were the notorious training camps at Bhavalpur and Muridke, these being further from the international boundary. Through critical target system analysis, we analyzed what was to be done to annihilate these targets and plan to engage these targets with precision air-to-surface guided munitions so as to avoid collateral damage. The modalities of planning process I will not go through at this instant. However, what I would like to show you is the results that we achieved through our targeted airstrikes. Could I have the second slide, please? Yeah, change, please. Okay. This is what the terror infra at Muridke looks like. If you see, north is as indicated, and to the right is east, where the international boundary lies. Could we have the next slide, please? Orientating. Just go back one slide. Okay. Please have a look at this red building, the series of buildings out here, and this empty ground. Next. If you relate, the empty ground is here, and you see this is the first weapon that is impacting. This is the impact point number 1 on Muridke training camp with our precision guided weapon on early morning 7. Next, please. Keep your eyes glued for the second weapon coming in and the second impact on the selected target point. Next slide, please. Third weapon, third impact. Continue. And fourth weapon, fourth impact. So through these targeted and precision targeting, we addressed the target at Muridke, which was the turning infrastructure. Can you hear me? All right. Okay, I'll come closer to the mic. Now we go to the next target, which is the Bhavalpur training camp. Next slide, please. Okay, just wait. So the effect, if you see, the impact point, if I can point out, this is the impact point. The ammunition has gone through the roof and it has created a blast inside, the photographs of which you would have, all of you would have seen. And the red building, after that, there was this double-story building. It has been completely decimated by precision targeting. Next, please. The target system, which was in the north, a series of buildings. I'll show you how it looked. Next. Completely destroyed by our precision targeting. Next. Now coming to Bhavalpur, this is the target complex that we are dealing with, a fairly large target complex. So we had to carefully choose the points that we needed to address, which were high value and which would meet our stated objectives of eliminating the terrorists. I would like to draw your attention to this red canopy, and in relation to that, I would cover the targets. One target system is a series of buildings here, other one here, and other one out here. Next slide, please. This is how it looked before, and this is how the building looked after the impact of the weapon. And orientation in relation to this red canopy, you can see here. Next, please. Before, next, and after. The roofs have completely collapsed. Next. This is the target system. Next. Precision targeting, and we have achieved our objectives here. Next. All right. So that was what we did on the 7th. Our objective was to address these two terrorist camps, and that we did with precision. And thereafter, we maintained a robust air defense posture, because remember, our objective was to target the terrorists and terrorist infrastructure, not any other infrastructure, not the Pakistani military, not the Pakistani any other infrastructure. So that is what we have maintained on the 7th of May. However, what we saw in the evening of 7th of May, we were saturated with a raid of Pakistani unmanned aerial vehicles and small drones. And these came in waves in our civilian areas, over our military installations, and all of them were successfully intercepted. Few of them did manage to land. However, there was not much damage that they did. And we have our robust counter-US hard kill and soft kill systems which did the job. However, the difference here was that we had targeted the terrorists. The adversary now has targeted our civilians and the military infrastructure. So it had to be responded to. So in a quick and calibrated response, that very night, we struck their radar installations at Lahore and close to Gujranwala, the LYT installation, to indicate to him that we are ready, yet we do not want to escalate. Our fight was with the terrorists and not with the Pakistani military establishment. Thank you.
Thank you, Air Marshal Bharti. So, ladies and gentlemen, he's outlined operations not only on the night of 6th and 7th of May, when Operation Sindoor commenced, but also on the subsequent night. Being well aware and familiar with the congenital and impulsive nature of our adversary. And even though we did attempt to reach out and communicate our compulsions to strike at the heart of terror to my counterpart in the immediate wake of Operation Sindoor, the request was brusquely turned down, with an intimation that a severe response was inevitable and in the offing. We were, of course, prepared. Operations on the 7th and the 8th, Air Marshal Bharti spoken about. On the night of 8th and 9th of May, they flew drones and aircrafts into our airspace all across the borders and made largely unsuccessful attempts to target numerous military infrastructure. Violations on the line of control by Pakistan also commenced yet again and precipitated into fierce RT engagements. The air operations on the night of 8th and 9th of May, I'll yet again request the DG Air Operations to cover.
I just covered what happened on the night of 7th and 8th. What we found that on the night of 8th and 9th, starting as early as 22:30 hours, our cities had a mass raid of drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, UCAVs, starting right from Srinagar, going down right up to Nalia. It was a mass raid in waves and it was relentless. However, we were prepared and our air defense preparedness ensured that there is no damage on ground or to any of the intended targets that the enemy might have planned for. The difference between 7th night and 8th night was that on 7th night, he sent in his Yiha class of UAVs. However, these UAVs can go some distance, they are armed. However, on the 8th, less numbers of armed UCAVs were there or UAVs were there, and more numbers of quadcopters, maybe for surveillance or just for harassment of civilians. This continued till midnight. Our air defense preparedness ensured that there was no damage on the ground, either to the military installations or to the civilians. However, the enemy had yet again shown that he wanted to up the ante and he wanted a fight, and we were up to the task. In a measured and calibrated response, we once again targeted his military installations, which included his SAM sites at Malirkant. This also included his surveillance radar sites at Lahore and close to Gujranwala. These were suitably addressed, and thereafter his drone attacks continued even till morning, which we countered, and during the daytime there was some respite. Here I would like to bring out another aspect. What we found was that while the drone attacks were being launched from somewhere close to Lahore, enemy had allowed his civilian aircraft to also continue to fly out of Lahore. Not only his own aircraft, but international passenger aircraft, which is quite insensitive, and we had to exercise extreme caution, even at the cost of some tactical disadvantage, to ensure that there is no damage to any of the civilian aircraft. And this was also brought out in our press briefing during the day. So I will now hand over to my colleague to cover the events of 9th onwards.
On land, we also undertook certain measures such as deployment of air defense and electronic warfare assets to establish an integrated grid with the Indian Air Force, and I have seen and heard some of you wax eloquent about the benefits of such an architecture when it comes to negating and combating air intrusions. We also carried out deployment to include movement of our forces in the land, sea, and air domains. The night of the 9th and the 10th of May saw similar intrusions by drones and aircrafts, and this time there was a concerted effort to target airfields and some very, very important logistic installations, albeit yet again unsuccessful and denied gallantly and efficiently, I must say, by the integrated Indian Air Force and Indian Army Air Defense. We further strengthened our deployment and also initiated some pressure points to send a very clear and unambiguous message to the other side to desist from any misadventures on land. Some of the airfields and dumps saw repeated attacks in waves from the air. All were thwarted. The Pakistan Army has reported to have lost approximately 35 to 40 personnel in artillery and small arms firing on the line of control between the 7th and the 10th of May. What the other side had probably also not reckoned with was the speedy and precise turnaround and hit back by the Indian Air Force. And I will yet again ask Air Marshal Bharti to speak about these significant and game-changing strikes. I will thereafter request Vice Admiral Pramod, my colleague and Director General of Naval Operations, to tell us about some very telling naval maneuvers in the Arabian Sea that exerted pressure on the night of 9th and 10th of May. Over to you, sir.
Commencing about 2000 hours, that is 8 p.m. local time, on 8th of May, several Pakistani unmanned aerial systems, drones, combat vehicles attacked multiple IF bases. These included Jammu, Udhampur, Pathankot, Amritsar, Bhatinda, Nal, Dalhousie, Thois, Jaisalmer, Uttarlai, Falodi, Nalia. These were almost simultaneous and they came in waves. All our AD guns and other systems were waiting for them. All these waves were neutralized by our trained crew using the air defense systems that they have, and also some of them were utilized using our legacy systems like Pechoras and IF Summer, which we have recently acquired. And some were neutralized by the Garud snipers. There was no damage on ground from these incursions and these mass raids, if I could call them, from the Pakistani side. However, following these relentless attacks on our air bases, on our forward positions, and on our civilian targets, this was time to convey some message to our adversaries. And therefore, a decision was taken to strike where it would hurt. And towards that in a swift, coordinated, calibrated attack, we struck these air bases, command centers, military infrastructure, air defense systems across the entire Western Front. The bases we struck include Chaklala, Rafiki, and mind you, Chaklala is Islamabad, Rahim Yar Khan, Sakar, sending a clear message that aggression will not be tolerated. This was followed by strikes at Sargoda, Bholari, Jacobabad. We also struck the C2 centers at Murid, the UAE complex at Murid, Rafiki, radar at Chunia, which I will show you, Rahimyar Khan airfield, and the unmanned combat aerial vehicle hangar at Sakar. I would like to reiterate here that we have the capability to target every system at these bases and more. However, it was only a measured response to instill good wisdom to our adversary to refrain from further escalation. IF response was directed only at military installations, avoiding civilian and collateral damage. I would now like to show you some of the effects that have been achieved as a result of our air operation. Here is the Pasroor air defense system. If you could see, zoomed up view. This is the radar mounted on a high tower. And after the strike, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. And after the strike, this is what has happened. This radar has been taken out, completely burnt. Next slide, please. The Chunia air defense radar, which was taken out on 7th and 8th. This is the radar site. A blown up photograph, once again, on a tower. Not very clear, but what you see very clearly is the after effect after we have stuck. The radar head has been completely decapitated. Next slide, please. Arifwala air defense radar. In this complex, you see how it looked before, blown up image, and after really blown up. Next. Coming to Sargodha airfield. Remember, this is one of their important airfields wherein they have a lot of assets, F-16s, other assets which they keep getting, training institutes. And we have stuck this airfield. It is not, if you zoom in here, then one impact point here on the runway and second impact point of our weapon, precision weapon on the runway. And if you see this blown up, repairing going on. Same here. Next. Rahimyar Khan. This is the area we have struck. A deep strike out here and one complex here. So this is how it looked before, and same. You see a big crater, another crater here, and this complex after strike neutralized. Next. Chaklala airfield, Noor Khan, once again a major air base, a lot of their logistic assets out here. This was the chosen complex that we intended to strike and convey a message. Next slide, please. This is how it looked before, and this is how it looked after our strike. Next. Sakar. We chose the radar site at Sakar. This is the radar site. And after it was struck, this is the aftermath, completely burnt out. Next, please. Aircraft shelter. This is how it looked before the strike, and this is how it looked after the strike. The roof of the buildings completely caved in and burnt. Next. Bolari airfield, aircraft hangar. This is how it looked before, and this is how it looked after the precision strike. Next. Jacobabad, aircraft hangar, and this is how it looked after. Next. So what I'm trying to convey here, ladies and gentlemen, is to start with, Our fight was neither with the Pakistani military nor with anybody else who's there on the other side. Our fight was with the terrorists. We neutralized the terrorists that we selected to be neutralized, and thereafter, we only maintained the air defense posture. However, we were relentlessly pounded by waves after waves, night after night, by his UCAVs, by his drones, and by his other unmanned aerial systems. And that left us with no choice but to retaliate, and yet our retaliation was calibrated, it was graduated, and it was proportionate. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In the aftermath of the cowardly attacks on innocent tourists at Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir by Pakistani-sponsored terrorists on 22nd April, the Indian Navy's carrier battle group, surface forces, submarines, and aviation assets were immediately deployed at sea with full combat readiness in concert with the Joint Operation